Well, we're alive, apparently.
Apparently?
Yes,
Are
welcome to
you?
tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show with Joe Rayo and Joe Chaffee,
And
which
Joe
is
Shaw,
which is
which
different
are
from last night's, which was Joe Chaffee with Joe Rayo, or something. Um,
interchangeable.
yes, we are.
Yeah.
So, lots going on. I was looking at since the weekend right before Christmas, we haven't had one of those days where you pull the map up and it's starting to light up like a Christmas tree with all the different watches and warnings. But if you look, if when I pull it up today, you're going to see that it looks like a Christmas tree with all the watches and warnings.
And the best thing about it is that where we happen to be here in the immediate tri-state New York area, and I know we have people who are watching in other parts of the country, but in our local area, we're getting the we're getting the long end of the stick, so to speak. We are not seeing any really significant severe activity. We will see our share of unsettled weather maybe Saturday and early Sunday, but we're on the warm side of this major weather system, Joe, and
Right.
we could make a couple of records between now and the end of the weekend.
And we've been talking about on and off for over a week now that Pacific North America index being uh, at a minus 600 reading. I think on the chart that's like either 5 or 6 standard deviations from the mean. The atmosphere is absolutely stretched to an extreme. And what we're seeing now, because the peak of the bottom, so to speak, uh, is going to be this weekend, and that's going to be the weekend that we're going to see what I think could be a very serious severe weather outbreak starting tomorrow into Saturday. A snow and ice storm for the middle parts of the middle Mississippi Valley all the way up through the Great Lakes, and also for maybe northern New York and northern New England. And like you said, this is for where we are, say Northeast Virginia to southern New England. This is really going to be more about the fact that temperatures are probably going to get close to record highs, and that maybe we have a few showers or a rumble or two of thunder Saturday night, and that's it. So we're gonna, we're definitely coming out way ahead on this.
Yeah, that cold front, when it passes through our area first thing early on Sunday, after it passes by, the shower should pretty much quit. The sky should rapidly clear if we get enough sunshine and a bit of a wind out of the west. A
Might go to
downslope,
70.
a downslope. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, yesterday I was talking about temperatures in the Hudson Valley. I was thinking that Saturday would be the warm day, but now I'm beginning to think that perhaps it's going to be Sunday, the warmest of the 2 days, with temperatures maybe getting into the mid 60s at least, and that would break. Well, we're in line to break the record on Saturday. It's a cheapy record. It's only 57 degrees.
Yeah, low hanging fruit.
And the record on Sunday at Westchester Airport is 63. That was set back just a few years ago in 2017. That record may go as well. So we've got a balmy weekend, a weekend straight out of late April or maybe late October with these abnormally mild temperatures coming up.
Sure. And again, all of this because of the fact that we've got, that the result of this super negative Pacific North America index. So it's very, very strong ridge in the east and off the southeast coast of the United States. Very, very deep trough in the west, along and off the west coast. And there's a few other geographic areas that are involved that are also part of all of this to take those numbers down as far as they are. The thing is, that's going to hitting bottom means that it will snap back like a rubber band, according to what I saw in the Teleconnections, which we'll look at later. But it's going to start rising fairly rapidly through next week. So we talked about this yesterday, Joe. You said about a change to colder. Maybe later next week, I think that's going to happen. We're going to see this the final this it can't stay like this forever in the West. The trough has to lift out to a certain extent, and I think it may do it in a big way later next week.
Yeah, I got to look at some of the upper air maps earlier, and I fully agree now that later next week we will see a definitive change. Although it's ironic, Joe, so balmy, so mild this weekend, when we see the temperatures drop, and they will drop noticeably in the early part of next week into the 40s, we're still running, and
above
maybe a few
average.
next week, well ahead of the ball game as far as where the normal high temperature should be. They should be in the upper 30s to near 40, and yet through much of next week, we'll be in the 40s, much cooler, obviously, than what we're going to see this weekend. But you folks are going to be spoiled this weekend, thinking that when you go back Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, it got so chilly. Well, even with that, it's above where we should be at this time of the year.
Right. I put up SPC's storm, the thunderstorm threat for tomorrow. I cannot remember ever seeing a moderate risk in the month of January, but they have a small area of moderate risk in northwest Louisiana and just into southern Arkansas and northeastern Texas. This means business here, folks, and a huge area of enhanced risk. I think we may see a serious tornado outbreak here out of this.
Yeah, and I think our good friend, our former colleague, and still good friend down in northern Louisiana, who is doing a television station, is the chief meteorologist, is going to be he's going to have his hands full tomorrow with all of this activity that's going to be taking place down in his neck of the woods. Um,
You're
uh,
talking about Marcus Walter.
Marcus Walters.
Yes.
He is. I mean, you're right. When was the last time we, in the month of January, we saw a moderate? I mean, it's one thing to see slight. It's another thing to maybe even see enhanced, but moderate in early January. I mean, that's absurd. You wait
Yeah.
until like March or April for something like that, and here we are staring it right in the face for tomorrow.
And even something the severe weather months, to get on up to that level is no easy task. Now I jumped to Saturday into Sunday morning, and we've got enhanced risk in the central and eastern Gulf states, large area of slight marginal risk into North Carolina, and a general thunderstorm risk all the way up to about New York City. I thought maybe Saturday night, but that's when we'll get some showers, and I thought there could be a rumble or two of thunder. I don't think we're going to see this get into the severe weather with this clearly, but
I
still,
yeah,
it's really impressive outbreak for this time of year.
yeah, you would think. I'm thinking that. You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking that ultimately, the Storm Prediction Center is going to advance that marginal zone all the way up into the Virginias.
Yeah,
Right
I
now,
could see that.
they have it suppressed across Tennessee and the North Carolina area. But I honestly believe that we're going to see, with time, the thought that that marginal area is going to be moving up into the Virginias, and for us, that zone of general thunderstorm coverage just barely makes it into the New York City area. I think that too will go further north, covering a good part of southern and southeastern New York and a good part of southern New England. Not so now, but with time, I think that with more and more accurate analyses, that everything is going to be pushing more to the north and east. That's a sharp cold front that's going to be moving through probably sometime around mid or late morning on Sunday, and that could very well be accompanied by convective activity even up here in our part of the country.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so let's take care of the other issues here regarding this particular storm, and that is WPC's 7-day rainfall forecast. And I can tell you this, that most of this is on the front end, but we're looking at 3 to 5 inches or more of rain in a large area from northeastern Texas all the way northeastward up into southwestern New York and also up in north central New York east of Lake Ontario. That's going to get complicated by the icing that's going to go on. And I was reading a post from a friend of mine who lives up up east of Lake Ontario and knows the area very well, and described the fact that this could be setting for a potential spring runoff with an ice storm and the heavy rains that are on top of it, as far as flooding is concerned. And but also some of that heavy precip extends up into south central Michigan, and some of that is going to be frozen or freezing precip. So
Right.
there will be significant icing going on in many areas from northern Missouri northeastward through northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, southern and central Michigan northeastward on up into northern New York, and eventually in parts of northern New England. So this is pretty serious stuff. And right now, as of late evening, And by the way, just bear in mind a couple of things, folks at home. I just wanted to point out something because it usually happens in situations like this. Uh, each weather service office, they don't all put their forecasts out. They don't all hit the send button at the same time. So sometimes, especially when you get into the middle part of the afternoon after 3 o'clock Eastern, when the new forecasts are supposed to be coming out, you can oftentimes see haphazardly where watches are put up for one spot and not for another, and you wonder, well, why is that? Just be a little patient and wait at least till about 5 o'clock Eastern time for all the offices to fill in the blanks, because otherwise you'd think at one point when this was going on, there were watches up for, say, northern Missouri, but not for southeastern Iowa, but then back up for southern Wisconsin. You just got to give them time to fill in the blanks. But we've got flash flood watches up from northeast Texas all the way up, and you see them up through western New York. Winter storm watches all of Michigan, northern Illinois, including Chicago, Wisconsin, and including the city of Milwaukee. We've got watches up for southeastern Iowa, northwestern Missouri, including Kansas City, down into eastern Kansas and a small portion of northeastern Oklahoma. And by the way, with the deep trough in the west, you've got winter storm warnings up for a good chunk of the state of Washington, and uh, also winter storm watches up for much of Idaho, with some advisories surrounding those watches and warnings on either side. That's from a separate. It's part of the deep trough that's out in the west. Energy from that is shooting eastward. And Joe, this is I got the Weather Service map up with the forecast ice accumulations, and I think this is going to be massaged in both directions in some places. But we're looking at forecasts of up to at least half an inch of icing in places like Lansing, Grand Rapids in Michigan. Chicago only has about a tenth of an inch forecast. Then in upstate New York, you're looking at up to half an inch up around Plattsburgh, and a third to a half an inch across northern Vermont, northern New Hampshire, and into Maine. So this is a pretty substantial icing event. And that icing event, by the way, also runs back down southwestward from Chicago, the northwestern half of Missouri, eastern Kansas, and into northeastern Oklahoma.
I'm just looking at the on my own screen here, the GFS 2 meter air temperature forecast from the 18Z run, and it's amazing. You look at a place like Presque Isle or Caribou up in northern Maine, they have a projected high of around 43 degrees at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday,
All right, let me
and then
back it up. I'm putting it up on the screen. Go ahead. Keep
okay,
going.
okay, yeah, 43 degrees up in the northernmost part of Maine at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday. But then as you advance along through Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, and into Sunday morning, by 1 a.m. on Sunday, that's what? That's 12 hours after they peak at 43. At 1 a.m., they're down to 6 degrees.
Yeah, I see
Um,
that. Yeah,
and
caribou it gets into the 40s and then it's down to 5.
right.
Yeah, and I see. No, that's the
That's impressive.
yeah, that is. And you know what? We don't. I used to think that we used to see that sort of thing a lot. I remember that happening a lot in the 70s, where we would get these like blasts of cold air and temperatures would fall all day. That doesn't seem to happen very much anymore.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
it's going to be, but for parts of the Northeast, for parts of northern New England, it's going to happen big
oh
time.
yeah,
And
no, I meant for us.
yeah, well, yeah, yeah. I remember those blasts too. And yeah, you're absolutely right. We don't see them quite as frequently as we used to back in the 70s and 80s.
And
But
that might be a cyclical thing. It might be, having to do with how whether how weather systems evolve, and whether you're in an El Nino, La Nina, minor, major, whatever, Madden Julian oscillation, CBS, NBC, and Fox. You know, but anyway, yeah, the push into upstate New York and northern New York seems to be a little less pronounced on the GFS. I'm going to pull up the NAM to see. Yeah, I mean, even the NAM actually is a bit less. Well, definitely not for northern Maine, but for upstate New York, it seems to be having trouble dragging that cold air southward. But if you're watching from Michigan, and in parts of Wisconsin and northern Illinois, you get your freezing line just comes to a grinding halt. I'm just going to run it back. You're in the 40s on Friday into Friday night, and by Saturday morning, that 32-degree line is down almost to the Indiana state line and sitting right over Chicago, and then gradually sinking south and east from there. So all of this being caused, by the way, thanks to a nice big old high up to the north, and the low is just kind of running along here to the northeast. Looks like it's going to pass just west of Detroit, but pretty impressive, at least in and around the lakes. And the other thing, Joe, is you look how the models are handling their radar views for the Gulf states. Really impressive looking line of thunderstorms here that forms Friday night into Saturday morning that runs into western Tennessee, western Mississippi, eastern Louisiana. It just has a really solid looking line here with the severe weather risk.
And if you look at us, for example, again going back to the 2 meter air temperature, I'm looking at the contours as opposed not the contour lines, but the filled color area. And if you go there, Joe, you can see that at 12Z on Sunday, at least according to the GFS now, they are showing a very distinct area of orange, 60 plus degree temperatures running all the way up along the Hudson River to about Albany. It drops back into the 50s, well down into the 50s, just to the west of that area, and it's in the 60-degree area across southern New England. But that orange is that zone of 60 plus degrees along the Hudson on Sunday morning at 12Z. So that suggests that the cold front, is going to be moving in just to the west of the Hudson, and that could be the spawning area for potential thunderstorm activity. And who's to say? I mean, we're talking about general thunderstorm activity,
Right.
but who's to say if we don't get a renegade
Well, it's not
cell of
impossible.
heavy duty precipitation?
It's not impossible. I mean, it warms sectors all the way up into Massachusetts there and into southern New Hampshire and Vermont. So it's kind of tricky this time of year sometimes with the wind direction, and you get a little bit of a marine layer, even though you might not have the isobar coming in from off the water, but it somehow finds a way. Meanwhile, you can see how cold it is up in the northern plains, with temperatures dropping below zero and not getting out of the single digits during the day on Sunday, and then we head on into next week. So let me get this set up here. I want to pull up. I got the water vapor imagery. You know things are serious when I pull up the water vapor imagery
Right.
on the loop. And I have to tell you, it's pretty impressive looking here. You can see how the deep trough in the west and the energy that's dropped down into Southern California, about to pivot around. You've got this long subtropical feed of moisture already in place, running up through East Texas and into the middle Mississippi Valley. I mean, this is a pretty impressive look here. When I see uh, the outline of the upper trough and how deep it is super deep. I'm just going to draw in. You just can watch the whole idea of that trough in the west, ridge in the east, and then you got this big patch of dry air that's off east of the Bahamas and out toward Bermuda. Just because it's January doesn't mean that you can't have a Bermuda high, correct, Joe?
Correct. This is a textbook. I mean, the positioning of this particular subtropical high is a classic Bermuda high setup. If this were July and August, we'd be sweltering with oppressive humidity and very warm to hot temperatures. It is January, and that's why we're calling for temperatures possibly over the weekend in some places climbing only to near 70 degrees.
Right. And this, by the way, folks, again, this is what a super negative Pacific North America index looks like. Deep trough in the west, ridge in the east. Again, there are a few other geographic areas that are part of this calculation, but these are the two main drivers. You have an unusually strong, if you're going to have a really super deep trough in one spot, you got to have a super strong upper high in the other. And that's exactly what you have here. It is reaching its peak negative strength, negative value this weekend. And then after that, as we said, it looks like it's going to start breaking down. And how it breaks down and all the other things that are going to be going on in the atmosphere will determine where we're going. Now, another thing, Joe, I got the surface map, and I caught this earlier today. I just wanted to bring up the latest surface map on the 21Z map. If you don't believe that there could be a severe weather outbreak tomorrow as being advertised, all you really have to do is look at the temperatures and dew points across much of southeast and south Texas. You've got temperatures in the mid 70s to around 80 and dew points in the mid and upper 60s.
Wow.
That's insane. There's a warm front analyzed running north and east of Dallas Fort Worth, southeastward, south of Shreveport in Louisiana, and then goes southeastward from there to about Baton Rouge, and then out south of Biloxi. I mean, this is really super. This is tropical air, and I'm even seeing dew points in the 70, approaching 70, just off the coast. With that south-southeast flow, I mean, you really have this strong tropical forcing going on, and you can also see that there's a dry line forming, because if you jump into West Texas right now, Amarillo is 64 with a dew point of 26. And you got temperatures in the low and mid 70s with dew points in the teens. So
Wow.
there's this dry there's this dry line that's out there like a dew point front, and that is really kind of setting the stage here, I think, for a serious severe weather outbreak. And in the meantime, by the way, we look up at the Great Lakes. We're seeing some cold temperatures right now, and cold enough for a little bit of snow that's going on with regards to what we see on the radar. But even here, in terms of cold, it's in the 20s and 30s, and the core of our cold air mass barely got above the freezing mark for me for a high today. That cold high is now getting ready to go out, and the warm up shall now begin.
Yeah, I think the temperatures in the Hudson Valley tomorrow morning are going to range between 22 and 33 degrees, a slow rise in the temperature overnight. Tomorrow approaching 50, more of a rise in the temperature. The temperature after sunset tomorrow night may briefly drop a couple of degrees, and then they'll start to rise again later tomorrow night. And Saturday, well, what else can I tell you? Mid 50s to low 60s. And Sunday, after that cold front comes rumbling on by, we could see temperatures reaching up into the mid 60s. It's absurd. It's incredible.
Oh, it is crazy. I just want to show everybody here in terms of snowfall that's being forecasted out of this. It looks like the Weather Service going for 4 in Chicago, 6 near Milwaukee. But there's some Lake Michigan effect going on in some spots, which is why you see some of the higher numbers there right along the immediate coast going up toward Green Bay of about a foot, and 6 to 10 inches from north of Grand Rapids on up through northern Michigan. And you can see the band of heavy snow, 4 to 6, 5 to 7 inches running from Milwaukee and Madison southwest toward Kansas City, and just about getting very close to Wichita, 3 there, 2 in Tulsa, 2 in Oklahoma City, and St. Louis is kind of on the edge with the coating to an inch. So this is going to be this. I think the bigger story here is going to be the ice rather
Yes,
than the snow. And by the
yes.
way, for you snow lovers, you really still need to go out west, because they continue to get clobbered in the Sierra in the Cascades with 50 or more inches running from from southwest Oregon all the way up to northwest Washington. I mean, just absolutely insane amounts there.
Yeah, it just north from over the weekend, from let's say Saturday night into Sunday night, anywhere from south central Michigan, the lower peninsula of Michigan, across to and just north of Buffalo, on up to the Adirondacks, on into northern Vermont and northern New Hampshire and southern Maine. That's where you're going to see a stripe of icy conditions, possibly anywhere from a quarter to maybe a half an inch in the worst case.
Yeah,
And then
I'll bring up the ice map again, which I now have up there.
and then to the north, that's where you'll see the snow. But you're going to have to go probably, if you're a snow lover,
Way up.
you're going to have to go way up. I mean, you're going to have to go into, well, let's say the upper peninsula of Michigan, north of New York State, probably up to about, well, from about Montreal and points north. That's where you'll get your good snows of 4 or 6 or 8 inches, and extreme northern sections of Maine, A place like Caribou and Presque Isle, for example, Madawaska, those areas too will be subjected to 4 or maybe as much as 6 or 8 inches. So it's interesting, Joe. An interesting if you look at a map of the Northeast for this upcoming weekend, you have potential heavy snow over northern Maine. You have a severe icing situation for central Maine, down across northern New Hampshire, northern Vermont, into upstate northern New York, the Adirondacks, and perhaps into parts of western New York. And further south of there, showers, and yes, maybe even some convective, unusually convectively strong thunderstorms, which may affect the big cities like Boston, New York, Philadelphia, all coming our way this weekend.
Right.
Amazing.
Got the GFS up with the its view of the radar, and I'll just run it back so everybody can see. So this is Friday evening. Tomorrow evening, you can see the 1037 high in the Dakotas. That area of spreading ice and snow up into the Great Lakes. The low runs up into northeast Indiana. On the GFS, it passes east of Detroit. The GFS has I think, a more robust snow and ice event for the Great Lakes region than the NAM does. The NAM's low is further north and is just a little bit warmer. The NAM also, I think, pins more snow down south and west of the low. So I think those are things that we're going to need to resolve when this whole thing gets going during the day tomorrow and tomorrow night. And there's your ice in northern New York and up into northernmost Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, with the low now moving east of Lake Huron. And of course, we get that cold front to come through here Sunday morning early. We said earlier, Joe, I think if we break out into some sun fast enough, we probably could see temperatures well up into the 60s to near 70 before we cool down into early next week. Now, I'm going to switch off. I want to go to the long range here because everybody's kind of, all the snow lovers. My God, it hasn't really been that long that the weather has been running against the snow lovers in general in the eastern United States, and I mean, really, it's only been about 10 days to 2 weeks that we've seen this, and the gnashing of teeth that's been going on has been so out of proportion and inappropriate in my view. But then again, that's my never to be humble opinion. But here's the upper air, and the first shot here is I'm just rolling it back to Saturday. This is your super negative, off the wall PNA, Pacific North America Index. Deep trough in the west and the big upper high that's off the southeast coast. Now, this system does its thing. Watch the upper low in southwest Canada over Alberta, Saskatchewan, getting kicked eastward, and that starts the ball rolling here, Joe. You're going to gradually see over the course of late next week and beyond, while the ridge is still there south of Florida, it gets flattened out, and it seems like we're going into a fairly serious repair job and pattern change here by the time we get into that around the period after, say, January 21st, 22nd. You got a nice deep trough in the east. And more importantly, there is a connection all the way up from the Arctic regions down into the southeastern part of the United States. And now a huge ridge building up in the west. So it looks like the models have been very consistent. The Europeans on this, on the same page as well. And we've seen a number of runs now throwing this out there, and it's gaining momentum in my view.
Yeah, and I'm especially impressed by the first shot, so to speak. As you know, I've been talking about around the 15th and 16th of a change, and as I'm watching this polar vortex sweeping across south central Canada around the 15th and 16th, and then literally just squashing, as you pointed out, squashing that upper ridge here in the east by about the 16th of next week, January 16th, next Thursday. That goes out, and then you have that other surge coming in, that other trough that's going to dig into the nation's midsection by the 22nd of January. And there's no question that we're going to be seeing a change, I think, of the overall pattern once we get past late next week, and especially so into the following week. So for all of you people out there who despise the unusual warmth,
I despise them.
the January type weather pattern will be going through this upcoming. If you don't like that, just take a deep breath because things are going to be changing. I think big time, perhaps by late next week into the following week.
Uh, the uh, the teleconnections today are catching up to the idea. Take a look at this negative PNA at minus 600 on the 12th, rises rapidly up to the neutral line around the 22nd. Now, you and I, have seen this in the past too. Whenever you get these, this is like an overinflated balloon that somebody takes a needle to and pops it, uh,
Right,
and and then you watch the balloon just kind of fly in the air and make all the funny noises. And when you were a kid, you thought it was really cool. But yeah, exactly. But when you see indices like this where they go from one extreme and that balloon pops, in the process, as they approach the neutral line, as that PNA index approaches the neutral line, that might be a day to pay attention to, a group of days to pay attention to, say January 21st to 23rd, because that huge pressure, these are big pressure changes that we're talking about in the atmosphere. One place is going from very low pressure to much higher pressure, and another place is going from very high pressure to much lower pressure. So when you're seeing the atmosphere kind of changing like that, it's got a headache. It's going to have to let it go somehow. So let's watch those dates. Let's just put it out there right now: January 21st, 22nd, 23rd, somewhere in that time frame.
I forget
As
I forget who it was, but somebody was complaining yesterday on my Facebook page about the fact that, oh, well, it looked like originally we're going to get a big snowstorm. Now the models are suggesting it's going to be a big rainstorm. And I said, you know what? You're looking out like 2 weeks from now.
you
It could still
can't
be a snowstorm. You can't
you
put your
can't
finger.
look at the surface. Look
Right,
at the upper air. I keep saying that all the time. The upper air is what's important. Look at the upper air and see what the upper air is doing. That at least you have to get a grasp of where the pattern is going. Then when you get in the shorter range, you start worrying about whether there's going to be a storm or not. Because the
right,
models are going to pick out all sorts of different things. Why put yourself into an emotional, roller coaster over what could be much ado about nothing? Just got to let the whole thing kind of play out first. The other thing I want to point out, too, very important here, is that the East Pacific Oscillation, or the EPO, is going rather strongly negative here by the time we get to about the 16th or the 17th of January, which is a week from tomorrow, a week from Thursday, Friday, week from tomorrow. So that's telling you that there's some cold air coming in. Into Canada and into the U.S. Proper. So the minus 200 reading is fairly significant. That is a strongly negative East Pacific Oscillation that's being set up. So we're seeing wholesale changes here in the upper pattern going forward. Now, remember, as I have said many times, the pattern change you want and the pattern change you get are two different things. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the troughs and the ridges are going to be exactly in the right spot to favor your area versus someone else's. And that's a short range, that is a short term problem, a short term forecast problem, which we can't get to until we get into the short range. Let me just say really quick, Mark Gladfelter, thanks for hitting Super Chat tonight. Really appreciate it. And I think there's one more. I'm trying to find it. Uh, there's somebody else who did, and I'm sorry, whoever it was. Thank you very much. I can't see it. Okay, but thank you for hitting super chat. Ruthless Goat says he's suffering from suffering from a dangerously low blood alcohol level. Trying to remedy. Work on it. Okay, just work on it. Um, let's just running through I'm trying to run through the chats, but they're up. Mine are updating very quickly. I don't know. I don't know if you could see them. Mine are moving so fast I can't see them. I know Peter Bicker, you messaged me about pattern change. I think it's gaining momentum as as we're seeing from the various runs of the weather models. For a while there, we were doing every other run. Now we seem to be doing every single run of the GFS, and the European is there as well. And by the way, some of the longer range European that goes out beyond 240 hours, which we don't get to see, which I don't get to see except on in a few places uh, when friends of mine send them to me, showing the pattern change to colder in the longer term. So we'll see.
Johnny Quest wants to know if you're going to do or will do the March 1993 superstorm.
All right, I guess we got some time. I don't want to keep you on for Jeopardy. Um, a couple of things, by the way, before we do that, I just want to. Where is that? I'm trying to find something that was. Hold on. Um, okay, so this is going along the lines of
By the way, Robert Woods, I didn't fart. that was
what?
when I made the balloon running out of air before the noise,
Oh,
and
okay.
and Robert
So
Woods said Joe Rayo just farted.
I don't know about all of these years, but I mentioned yesterday about the fact that somebody used Central Park still has not gotten a 1.5 inch snowfall, okay, for a single event.
For a single
And
event. Yeah.
when you look back on the years, there have been 16. This has happened 16 times in 151 years, and I'm looking at some of the years where that I know off the top of my head immediately were back end loaded. So you have um, 1970. Well, I got to go back and look at what February and March did in 1975. I don't think it was very much. But 1993 is on there, which would take you to the superstorm of 93. And January of, well, January of 95 was no good. 98 is no good. 2007, I know, is no good. 92 is no good. 86 is eh. 75 is eh. And then there's a bunch of years going back from 55 and before. I guess the odds do favor, without that inch and a half happening soon, that a subnormal year of snowfall is likely, but there are exceptions to this. So, you can make statistics work for you if you just look at enough of them. You can bend them to make them suit your agenda, whatever it happens to be. But I will, I got to go back and look at some of those individual years. Now, Scott Briller says the last big severe weather outbreak, tornado outbreak, in January was an outbreak on January 21st, 22nd, 2017. So it was just 2 years ago.
3 years ago.
That's what I said, 3 years ago. I lost I lost a year. Um, yeah, 3 years ago. So that was in the winter of 16-17, which was a La Nina year. Now, it's kind of interesting because a lot of people have pointed this out. And when you look at the kind of pattern that we've been in, it's sort of like a La Nina or an El Nino year, even though we don't have one. So obviously there are other factors in play. I said, to the tornadoes and the outbreak in January 21st, 22nd, there were 23 tornadoes on that day. And on January 22nd, there were four more. So you're talking about 27 tornadoes, and they were in the state of Georgia for the most part. Very interesting. And I'm looking at the upper air maps from that day on the link that Scott gave me. I'll put it up on the chat board, but they have the 700 millibar. They don't have a 500 millibar up here. So it's a little bit of a different upper air setup, but it was every bit as productive. And there's some pretty interesting radar shots here and some tracks of tornadoes. So I'm going to put that for those of you who are interested. I'm going to put that link up on the chat. Thank you, Mr. Briller, for doing that. And there was one other one that I wanted to take a look at here. Hang on one second. Did I miss something?
I don't know.
I'm looking here. I guess maybe that was it. Okay. I guess I thought there was one other message that I got in here, but I guess there wasn't. I get so many messages and emails during the day that after a while they all kind of pile onto each other. And I lose track. I try to stay ahead of the game. So those of you, by the way, if you're on my Patreon platform, when you message me, I try to get back to you right away. As it happened today, I had things to do this morning, so I was running errands. So I didn't really I didn't put up anything until this afternoon, but I did put stuff up, and I am playing catch up. All right, so Johnny Quest wants to look at 93. All right, let me.
And one thing about 93, Joe, that's a superstorm of March 13th, I think, 1993. But I also remember in that same winter, actually it wasn't officially winter yet, the nor'easter of December 12th, 1992. And that was incredible to me because I was living on Long Island at the time, and I don't remember ever seeing so many roadside signs literally blown
Yeah,
flat by tremendous winds that we
there was
at that
some pretty
point.
non-snow nor'easters in the late 80s, early 90s. You know,
Right. We didn't get much snow with that storm. We did get kind of like a slushy bit of snow in the second half of that 1992 storm, the December of 92 storm. But correct me if I'm wrong, I think Worcester got slammed with like
uh,
20 or 30 inches of snow with that.
I believe you're right. By the way, just really fast, as I want to just remind everybody, lightningmaps.org. I have it all set and ready to go. So if we're going to have a severe weather outbreak tomorrow, we can at least look and see where the lightning strikes are. And these are it's delayed by about 30 minutes. But if you look, a few lightning strikes have shown up in and around in Missouri, near east of Springfield, and also down in Arkansas, down to about Fort Smith, and starting to see a few lightning strikes north and east of St. Louis. So at least today, these thunderstorms are not severe, but tomorrow we may have some fun with this. So this is lightningmaps.org. Now, let me get that. Let's go really fast with the 93 storm because this is actually going to require me to rack my memory a little bit. March, you remember the date of the 93 storm? I want to say the 10th.
I think it was like Sunday the 12th and Saturday the no Sunday the 13th and Saturday the 12th, 1993. Friday the 11th. I definitely know it was in that time frame. Um, and the amazing low barometric pressure readings along the eastern seaboard. Many places broke their all-time low barometric pressure readings with that particular storm.
Yeah, I'll bring the surface map up with that too. I just wanted to show everybody at least what the upper air looked like. Um, March. Let's go to bring up from the 8th. And you could start to see this happening. Hang on. Oh, come on, work for me here. Uh, so we're up to March 10th. I'm still not even recognizing this upper air yet on the 10th. I'm probably too far. A couple. Now we're at the 11th. Do I have the right year? Yes, I do. I have the right month. All right, so here's your surface map on March the 12th, Friday to March the 12th. You have a big high coming down out of Western Canada, spreading into the eastern part of the United States. That was very, very cold air. And here's and you can also see from the colored lines of the deep upper air trough that was diving down into west of the Great Lakes, down into western Missouri. The trough axis was probably just a little bit too far to the west because of the changeover to rain that occurred along the immediate coast. But this did set up as some, it was really incredible here. 997 low in the Gulf, which deepened to a 989 low. That's almost a Cat 1 hurricane. Well, it's not quite, but it's a borderline Cat 1 hurricane coming on shore on the Florida Panhandle. And that low just continued to deepen. A 980 low in southeastern Georgia. You see where the trough axis is more like at 90. But if it had been just a few degrees further to the east, Joe, I think that would have been snow up and down. I mean, we got about a foot here on the coast up
Right.
at my house. So it was about 9 or 10 inches. But yeah, this is a really wrapped up. This is one of those once in a generation type storms. A 966 low in southeastern Virginia. I mean, that's just crazy. Super negatively tilted trough, very, very sharp. You can see how the whole trough just kind of lifts up and out. and goes to the northeast. And if you want to, I'll bring really fast up the surface map as we're coming up on 7:45 Eastern time. Hang on, let's go back to 93 and March, March 13th. Look, oh God, I was too close. This was a 960 low analyzed. Joe, you had this low in southeastern Virginia, a 960 pressure. The last isobar on the west goes almost all the way to Kansas City, and the easternmost isobar goes out almost to 60 degrees west. I mean, this thing just was, it was 30 degrees across in all directions. It was huge.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I remember on Long Island that at least during the first part of that day on Saturday, snow coming down at a rather moderate to heavy pace, and then sometime in the mid afternoon, it changed over to just very heavy sleet.
Right, I remember
I
that.
remember being outside. It was like being hit by a machine gun. Because they had some roaring winds to go along with that heavy duty sleet. It was an incredible storm. And you're right, we may not see the like of something like that again for a very long time. Of course, now that I've said that statement, watch what happens in February and March of this year.
Well,
Something,
something like that though is like a generational event.
yeah,
It happens every 30 or 40 years, and then you think when it happens, it's going to happen every year, and it just doesn't. When you think about it, Joe, what's it? At 26 years now since that happened. So
yeah.
we've had a whole generation go by, so it might be time. Scott Briller, thanks for hitting super chat. Javon Perry, Howard Vanderhoff, thank you. We can I get for WD-40 to lube up our snow blowers. Thank you so much. Appreciate it greatly. I'm trying to get everybody. I want to make sure I get thank yous to everybody that posts. And what happens is after a while the notification disappears, so I can't see it. Um,
Okay, did you mention Kenneth Simmons?
no, but Kenneth Simmons, we'll mention him now. Thank you for hitting
Yeah.
super chat tonight. Did he?
William Huber?
William Uber's hit it too. Very good.
Huber?
Yeah, I see it now. They're popping up now. Yes, Kenneth Simmons, thanks very much for the super chat hit, and Bill Uber, thank you very much for the super chat hit. As I said, Javon Perry, Scott Briller, two super chat hits from Javon Perry and Howard Vanderhoff. Thank you so much. And I know someone hit it earlier tonight, and I can't see it. It's driving me crazy.
And Mark G says
Oh,
thank
Mark
you.
Gladfelter. Yes, thank you, Mark.
Oh, well, no, I'm just saying Mark G just making the comment. Thank you, Joe R, for giving something once in a lifetime next month. I said we'll see if it happens. One of my a dear friend of mine, a a first-rate climatologist, Dr. Jerry Thaler, who had for many years in the Yorktown Heights area had taken observations for the National Weather Service. He received the Thomas Jefferson Award. He passed away last October at the age of 90. And I said to his son at the funeral home, I said, you watch. Now that he's gone, we're going to get something unique happening this upcoming winter that Jerry would have been so happy or would have loved to have seen. So if we do get a once in a generation or a once in a lifetime event before this winter is over, you can probably thank Dr. Thaler for that.
Well, plenty of time. Um, Peter Bicker asked an interesting question. I never really thought of it this way, because I looked at it as sort of apples and oranges in a sense. But which storm was bigger in size, the March 93 or Sandy? Sandy had the lower pressure,
Right.
and when it became post-tropical, it spread out, covering a huge geographic range like the 93 storm did. I don't know. I'm just think you're kind of, in a sense, in a sense, it's an apples and oranges comparison. They were both huge, and I think they were both generational events.
Right. And it maybe another 50 before we see a storm like Sandy, or even longer, because that track that it took was unique.
Yes,
I actually saw technical papers written
that said it
about
could never happen that way.
what if we got a storm that took this kind of track coming in from the Atlantic Ocean on a northwest trajectory. And the common remark about that was, well, that could happen, but that's probably never going to happen in our lifetime. Guess what? It did.
Right. Now on to the next thing that's not going to happen into our lifetime, whatever that happens to be. We'll find
Right,
out soon enough.
right.
All right. So look, let's finish up early because Jeopardy starts at 8 o'clock.
Right.
Thanks everybody for being here. Really appreciate it. We will. I guess we'll be here tomorrow night.
What do I what am I doing tomorrow
I'm
night,
just
Joe? Where am I
checking. I'm
where
just.
am I going
I know,
tomorrow
but
night?
I don't want to make assumptions. I'm just checking. Okay, so I will get. We'll do this tomorrow night, and then we're at a weekend. And usually I don't do live streams on Saturdays unless the weather is really rough, because kind of need a day off. But we'll figure that out tomorrow. If it looks like Saturday's going to be a crazy day, we'll do it Saturday, and then I'll maneuver the Sunday one around somehow. No
You know what
matter.
you know what we would be doing right about this time if we were at the TV station in Rye Brook, right?
I'd be at my
We
mother's.
well, yeah, you'd be at your mother's, but we would be huddled together, you, me, and the rest of
Oh
the staff,
right, right.
and saying, will they call us in for to come in on Saturday
Oh
to
yeah, the
do work or whatever
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that?
I know. No, thank God we don't have to do that anymore. I don't want
Right.
to. I'm so that I'm so happy that I don't have to drive in any of this stuff. If we want, let it snow all at once. I don't care. I don't have to deal with it. All
Yeah,
right.
I was just,
So
it would be like, for example, my wife and I were already working out our game plan as to how we're going to take what down on Saturday because it's going to be so mild. Come home tonight, for example, if we were still working, and say to her, he said, "I'm sorry to tell you, but they said I have to come in on Saturday to
yeah,
take care of the potential severe weather and the bombing." And my wife, went, what?
yeah.
I have to deal with that anymore.
Austin Belkowski saying thank you for putting up the ice accumulation maps. Not a problem. We'll be doing that tomorrow for sure. I'm going to dig around and probably find a few other see what if I can get the model forecasts for icing and what WPC might think about all of this. So we'll make sure that's front and center for tomorrow. So everybody have a great night, and we'll see you on Friday. Good night, Mr. Rayo.
Good night. We ought to do this like Chet Huntley and David Brinkley.
Good night,
Good night.
Mrs. Good night. Wait, I
No,
got to turn it the right way. I have to turn my head in the right direction. Good night, Mr. Rayo.
good night, Joe,
No, you have
and
to
good
turn your head the other way.
this way.
Yeah, and then I go
Yeah.
this way. You have to
All
go
right.
opposite. Good night,
Okay.
Mr. Rayo.
Good night, Joe, and good night for NBC News.
Yes. NBC, the Nothing But Crap Network.